ain't about money. I make a lot of money doing this, yes, but that's not what I'm doing. If I was doing it for money, I wouldn't develop.
In May 1992, this transgender body seller was last seen with Eddie Murphy, where she was arrested. This one was found dead, okay? So her name was Shalomar.
Eddie Murphy and Mel B's teen Angel is celebrating a big milestone. Mel B takes to Instagram April 7th to wish Angel a happy 18th.
You know, and that's what's weird about this, to have your sexuality question and your moral fiber question and all that when all I was doing was trying to be nice.
Real ones know that Charlie Murphy was always funnier than Eddie. So why did Eddie end up being worth $500 million while Charlie stayed in the background? Well, some believe it's because Charlie refused to pay the Hollywood game. The game where celebrities are allegedly asked to raise one of their kids trans. See, there's this theory floating around that certain celebrities have to prove their loyalty by either being intimate with a trans person or raising one of their children as one. And Eddie Murphy did both. But Charlie never did any of that. He kept his life clean, protected his kids from Hollywood, and stayed away from the weird stuff. See, Hollywood is a machine, and if you want to be on top, you gotta show them you're willing to be controlled. Celebrities are just puppets at the end of the day. If you want to figure out who's really in charge, you have to look at who signs their checks. Eddie knew this, and he played the game, but Charlie never let anyone control him. In fact, there's this old interview with Charlie that just resurfaced, where he specifically said he's not controlled by money.
The thing that helped me was that, you know, from the Chappelle Show, I had plenty of love from people that was giving it up from being fans of the show. And that was fuel. I used it as fuel. I continued honing my craft, make myself better, because I always had it in me that it ain't about money. I make a lot of money doing this, yes, but that's not what I'm doing. If I was doing it for money, I wouldn't develop, okay? Money is not going to inspire you to develop. You have to really love what you're doing to develop. You know, it's in you.
Indeed, and the interesting thing about that, and I think the perception of fame and television, and obviously there's different levels of it, but I actually heard that you were only making $500 an episode for the Dave Chappelle show. So obviously the money was an inspiration, right? Most people would assume because you were on television that this cat's raking it in.
Dave Chappelle was raking it in.
Right.
That was the Dave Chappelle show. Dave Chappelle was raking it in. Nobody on the show but him.
Now let me give you some context before we get to the trans stuff. Charlie and Eddie Murphy were born just 2 years apart. Charlie came first in 1959, then Eddie in 61. Their parents split when Charlie and Eddie were still toddlers, and then in 1969, their father was murdered by a woman he was seeing, so there was nothing easy about their childhood. Charlie also got into trouble at a young age and spent 10 months in jail as a teenager. However, he later cleaned up his act, enlisted in the US Navy, and served for 6 years. Meanwhile, Eddie was already on SNL at 19 years old, and it didn't take long before Hollywood snatched him up. Then came 48 Hours, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop, Coming to America, Harlem Nights, one blockbuster after another. And by the time Eddie was in his mid-20s, he was already one of the biggest stars in the world. And that kind of rise doesn't just happen. Now don't get me wrong, Eddie is a 1 in a million talent. No one can take that from him. But we all know there are plenty of talented people who never make it in Hollywood. And that's because talent alone is not enough. You also have to prove your obedience to the folks who pull the strings. And Eddie did just that. Meanwhile, Charlie refused to be controlled. People who worked with both of them will tell you Charlie was actually the better comic. More raw, more real, and unapologetic. Eddie had that movie star energy. He's more commercial, movie funny, but Charlie was different. Remember his Hollywood stories on Chappelle's show? Charlie didn't have to perform to be funny. He just was.
My brother, you know, he's a lot more compassionate than I am. He's looking at limos driving off, and he said, wow, man, Rick really needs help. I was like, yo, we just gave him some help. Bust his ass and shit. I bet you he won't come over here and disrespect like that again. Wrong. Talking about Rick James, man.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
But like I said, Hollywood doesn't work on talent alone. It's about connections, access, and it's about what you're willing to do to get to the top. Charlie wasn't willing to do certain things. Eddie was. And we're about to get into exactly what those things were. On May 2nd, 1997, around 4 in the morning, Eddie was pulled over in Santa Monica. And in the car with him was a transgender street worker named Shalomar Sayuli. Shalomar was a Samoan-born trans woman who won Miss Island Queen in 1993. She later relocated to LA to become a fashion designer. designer. But when that didn't work out, she started earning money on the Santa Monica Boulevard. And after some time working the streets, the LAPD knew Shalomar by name. So when they pulled over Eddie's car and saw Shalomar inside, they immediately knew what was up. Now, Eddie was eventually let go, but Shalomar was arrested on an outstanding warrant. And by the next day, the incident was all over national headlines. But Eddie quickly went into damage control and claimed he simply wanted to help Shalomar because she needed a ride. As for the reason he was out cruising the notorious West Hollywood Strip at 4 a.m., Eddie claimed he was looking for a book to read. Yeah, you heard that right. He said he was bored because his wife was out of the country and he just wanted something to read.
You know, and that's what's weird about this, to have your sexuality question and your moral fiber question and all that, when all I was doing was trying to be nice to somebody.
Eddie Murphy tells E.T. that his wife and children were out of town, says he wanted something to read and went to a late-night newsstand. He stopped here and picked up the suspected transsexual at 4:45 in the morning. He says he thought he was aiding a distraught woman.
Looks like a pretty Hawaiian girl in the corner crying. It looks like she was crying. She goes, oh, Eddie Murphy. And she noticed him at the light. She recognized Eddie Murphy. Oh my God. So I go, what are you doing? Why are you out here working the streets so late? She goes, oh, I'm on my way home. Can you give me a ride home?
Police tailed them for 2 miles before pulling him over. Police say he is guilty of no misconduct, but there was a warrant out for the alleged prostitute. A judge has ordered that man, 20-year-old Addison Ciuli, to serve 90 days in jail. Murphy says he has often stopped to try to help prostitutes, but here is what he said in an impromptu news conference on the set of his new movie.
Being a good Samaritan blew up in my face, basically, what happened. And I'm never giving anyone a lift again.
Listen, if you believe Eddie was looking for a book at 4 in the morning, you probably believe Jussie Smollett was looking for a Subway sandwich at 2 a.m. during a Chicago blizzard. Eddie's story made zero sense then, and it sounds even more ridiculous now in hindsight. But here's where it gets really dark. On the morning of April 22nd, 1998, almost exactly a year after her incident with Eddie, Shalomar's lifeless body was found on the sidewalk outside her apartment. Police claim she fell from the 5th floor and sustained fatal head injuries. However, the autopsy found no substances or alcohol in her system. Also, the coroner's report mentioned that a neighbor heard a scream around 5 a.m., right around the time Shalomar died. And that detail had a lot of people thinking that maybe it wasn't just a fall. Maybe someone pushed her. Shalomar's friends and family also didn't buy the official story. One of her friends, who went by the name Viva, even hinted that the police might have been involved in the cover-up because they refused to investigate. But that's not all. Several other girls who worked with Shalomar claimed she had been getting threats ever since that incident with Eddie Murphy. And then Shalomar's brother David said that Shalomar became paranoid and was convinced a hitman was following her. And just hearing Eddie's name would send her into a full-blown panic attack. But this wasn't the end of it. Because after Shalomar's story blew up, other trans women came forward with stories about their encounters with Eddie. Eddie then filed several lawsuits against the Globe, the National Enquirer, and even the New York Times, claiming they were publishing false information about him. However, all those lawsuits were mysteriously dropped or settled out of court. By the way, this all went down right when Eddie was trying to make a Hollywood comeback after multiple flops. He was determined to get his career back, so he hired attorney Marty Singer and private investigator Paul Baresi, and allegedly told them to track down all trans women he was in contact with and offer them payouts in exchange for their silence. Baresi reportedly got these women to sign affidavits and record videos saying their original claims weren't true. And according to investigative journalist Mark Ebner, one of the trans workers showed him the IRS documents proving that Marty Singer's firm paid her $15,000 to take back her story about hooking up with Eddie.
First of all, how I met my first transgendered person who had claimed she had been with Eddie Murphy in the past was I literally went to a bar that was, I can't remember the name of it, it was on Yucca, just south of Hollywood Boulevard. By that newsstand, the World News, where Eddie had stopped that night. Yes. And I sat at the bar. One night goes by, I'm friends with the bartender now. I'm tipping him well, I'm talking to him, and he finally got me to one of the women. And she said, oh yeah, I've been with Eddie. He likes, he has a foot fetish, and also Carnal Candy has been with him, and so. And, I went and I said, so what's the deal? And she said, well, the deal is that Eddie Murphy's lawyer, Marty Singer, who's in the news these days for other things, basically I told my story to the tabloids, and he paid me $15,000 to change my story. And I said, well, interesting. Okay, can you prove that? This woman kept records, and she handed me a check and her IRS, everything. She had everything. And it was signed by Marty Singer.
And all this effort to bury the incident with Shalomar ultimately paid off for Eddie. The story eventually disappeared, Eddie got his career back, and continued making millions. Meanwhile, Shalomar's family never got any real answers about what happened to her. Now here's where we circle back to the whole Hollywood trans agenda storyline. Many believe this wasn't just some random scandal, but a test. A way for Eddie to show he's willing to do just about anything to stay at the top. But now some insiders are saying the price Eddie paid didn't stop there. It followed him and his bloodline. So fast forward a few years, Eddie's still on top, but his personal life is a mess. He starts dating Spice Girl Mel B in the early 2000s. She gets pregnant, but Eddie denies the child. He then drags Mel through court, slanders her in the press, makes her take a DNA test, and after all that, it turns out it was his kid. The child was born biologically female, and Mel named her Angel. But fast forward to 2024, and Angel comes out as trans and starts living as a man. And of course, Eddie had no choice but to publicly say he supports Angel's transition. So look at the pattern. You got the situation with trans woman Shalomar in the 90s. She ends up dead under sketchy circumstances. Then Eddie's own child, the one he tried to deny, ends up trans. Is it a coincidence? That's up to you to decide. But in Hollywood circles, there's this idea that when you sell your soul, it doesn't just affect you, it affects your family. Remember when Kanye said celebs are asked to sacrifice one of their loved ones to prove they can be controlled?
If my mom ain't here, my mama was sacrificed. Me too. You understand? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Michael Jordan, what about him? His daddy, right? Bill Cosby, his son, right? Dr. Dre, his son. You're out in Hollywood, a lot of people come up missing. Feels like it might be a lot of that in order to control, traumatize. They want to monetize and traumatize.
Now, I'm not claiming that Eddie is responsible for Shalomar's death, or that he signed some type of contract to raise Angel as trans. But either way, Charlie Murphy never had any of this. No scandals, no paternity drama, no weird situations. While Eddie was going through all that mess, Charlie was doing his own thing, grinding and staying true to himself. He did stand-up, wrote scripts, took small roles. He never tried to be Eddie or play the Hollywood game. And where did it get him? He never came anywhere close to Eddie's wealth and died at 57. And we see this same story again and again in Hollywood. The real ones, the ones with morals and principles, are either blacklisted or gone before their time. Meanwhile, the ones who are willing to do anything for money and fame keep thriving. But I want to hear your thoughts on this. Why did Charlie never reach Eddie's level of success? And what's your take on the whole trans agenda and alleged sacrifices in Hollywood? Drop your comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video.